Observe.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode number 21 of the Observe and Rapport Show. I'm Kyle Brennan, joined as ever by my beautiful co-host, Keith Sullivan. Keith, how we doing today?
I said, like, you just really jumped into it.
Yeah, I don't need any time to prepare.
Yeah, you were like, all right. So, yeah, that was good. We're good. We're fantastic. It was 81 degrees today, man.
It's a furnace.
We
in this attic that we are in right now.
Yeah, it's pretty hot. It's pretty hot. If we start sweating, it's, because, you know what, man? I don't take the air conditioner out of the window. I'm sorry. I really don't. I left it in all winter, and today I'm leaving the house. The wife's like, it's really hot in here. I'm like, turn on the air conditioner.
That's nice. Yeah.
Why do you have to take it out of the window? If you insulate it correctly, what's the point?
Well, because these windows are 70 years old, and they definitely aren't
insulated.
Well,
Well, George Washington built this house. I get it. Like, you got to be careful. But, like, everyone's like, take the AC out of the window. Like, I remember, like, and I've done it, like, last year. But, like, this year, I just didn't get around to it. We had a baby. You get busy. And now that it's here, it's like, well, thank God.
Yeah.
What a pain in the ass putting them away, and then the water gets all over the fucking floor, and it's a pain in the ass.
It's a great feeling, too, when you hear that hum of the AC going on a hot day.
Yeah, dude. Yeah. Dude, listen, you walk into...
That white noise, too, and like you're trying to take a nap, and you get that AC on.
No one talks about this with having babies, but now I can't sleep without a white noise machine.
Oh, my God.
I'm fucked.
Dude, I don't know how this generation of kids is going to be able to sleep in like a non-perfect environment, because I don't know about how your daughter sleeps, but like my nieces and nephews, it's vacuum sealed, like blackout curtains,
right,
jet engine white noise,
yeah.
and I'm like, how are they ever gonna sleep in like a hotel or like a camping trip or like sleep over a friend's house?
You remember when you were a kid, you kind of didn't. If you slept, like, I always used to have trouble sleeping at like a friend's house. I'd be sitting up like, you just feel like off. It's off. It's not supposed to be. And like this whole routine of like, the pillow has to come to bed. Bunny comes to bed. Elmo and Cookie Monster come to bed, but Grover doesn't.
No.
And he stays on the couch waiting for her in the morning. Really weird. And like, so there's that whole like routine part of it too. So I can't even imagine a sleepover. Like, it's sleeping in some kid's room. Well, if they don't use like the other night we were sleeping and I woke up like, what the fuck? I was like, something's wrong. And the thing is that it was silent in the room. The noise machine turned off.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, that's what it is. Like, I thought you would think I heard a noise, but what I actually heard was the silence was deafening. Yeah.
Well, that's what happened when we moved, because we lived in Queens and we were on like a main boulevard.
Right.
So it was sirens and honking like 24/7. And we got so used to that. And then when we moved here, the first night in this house,
too quiet.
It was scary.
Yeah. You need a constant hum, like an air conditioner or a white noise machine. But yeah, that's all coming, man. The weather, and like being from Long Island, that we just went over this word, dichotomy. You get a lot of dichotomy of the seasons. Is that the right way to use that word?
I don't know. But
really
it sounds right.
It sounds right. You get the winter, you get the fall, you get all four seasons, right? So the summer hits like a fucking, it's like a big warm hug, man. And like, on Long Island, it's all starting. The lobster rolls, the wineries are coming, the beach, and after the beach you go to the ice cream and you got like sunburn a little bit, and then you go. To me, it's all about the lobster roll, like that.
Is it really?
Yeah, man. I'm a big
you
lobster
like a cold
roll
lobster
guy.
roll or hot?
Cold.
Oh, I like it hot.
I like it with a piece of white bread, like a thick white bread, not even a hot dog bun, with some French fries. And I don't use I'm not a horseradish guy. I don't like that stuff either. But yeah, I love the lobster roll. Seafood, Long Island, dude, clams, oysters. We're talking about, puffer fish. I'm talking about all of it. It's coming. It's so exciting, dude.
Yeah. I mean, the nice part is you get to appreciate those little things, when the seasons change.
Yes.
Even just the first time, like putting on a pair of shorts, getting some sun on those legs after a long winter.
By the way, have you been to Heckscher recently?
Not recently.
The swans had babies. So there's like 5 little baby swans swimming around with mom. And dude, they have that made there. They've got Swan Island in the middle, which there's no bridge to get to it.
Yeah.
They have that whole thing with nests and like their own little house there. But we went, and she's looking at the little ducklings, and everybody's happy, and it's summertime on Long Island. Dude, you can't tell me that you're not excited about the summertime on Long Island.
No, yeah, iced coffees and just like
iced coffee.
Cold beers hit differently. I was craving one today. So I had a wild story today with the fire department. So there was
in this heat.
Oh,
that sucks.
And the reason I was craving a cold beer, but so got a call. It was like 2:45 of a motor vehicle accident, and
where? What street?
It was right in front of the hospital.
Okay.
In that area. Mm-hmm. And it's actually the third accident in the exact same spot, which is pretty wild.
Oh.
So this one was, I believe, the woman driving just...
Not a bad place to have an accident right outside the hospital.
The other two that I've seen were like T-bones, like someone trying to make a left and whatever. This one, I think the lady just crashed into a parked car on the side of the road and flipped over.
Car flipped.
Yeah, so it's interesting because a lot of the fire calls we go on as a volunteer firefighter in the suburbs, 95% of them are, bullshit. Just, everyone's okay. Don't worry to go home, whatever.
Cat stuck in a tree.
Yeah, you're back home in 20 minutes. This one, it was like real deal. And like, you just saw everyone like click on like, oh shit, this someone turned over, like trapped in the vehicle, which means jaws of life.
Right.
So we got to use the jaws of life.
Wow.
It was a 70-year-old woman trapped in the passenger.
She was stuck in the car.
She was
70.
She was driving and it flipped onto the driver's side. So she was trapped. She couldn't get out. And she's 70, kind of like immobile. So when I got there, I was the second truck on scene when we got there, and we were cutting off the roof of the car, which was cool.
That's so crazy.
And then I was in the trunk trying to see if I could like cut out the back seat to see if we could put a stretcher in there or to take her out. So it was pretty wild to see. There's probably like 15, maybe 20 firefighters there, all working. Probably took us like 35 minutes to finally get her out. Yeah. She seemed okay. She was talking, responsive. They put her on the stretcher. They medevaced her in a helicopter out of there. But just
helicoptered her out of there?
Yeah, because Huntington Hospital doesn't do trauma. They have to fly them out to Stony Brook. Yeah, she seemed okay. But again, I think it was just because she was 70 years old, and I think she probably already had some
scary
health issues. But yeah, it was interesting.
She was shaken up, like freaked out, or
for sure. Yeah. But when she got out, she was like, "Oh, can someone grab my wallet?" And like, so she was like with it, Yeah. And she was moving her arms and legs, so it was like good to see. But yeah, it was pretty wild to just go from like literally working from home on my laptop, answering emails, to just helping someone out of a trapped car who's having a way worse day than any of us are.
The jaws of life basically are big mechanical scissors, right?
Yeah, so there's two. There's the cutters that are just huge scissors that they actually move pretty slowly, but they just crush anything. And then there's the spreaders.
Oh, okay.
So like one that goes the opposite direction to spread open if you need to, open a car door that's locked or whatever.
Right.
Those things are powerful as fuck. Man.
Yeah, of course.
They're fun to use.
You had to be trained, right, to use those.
Yeah. And they're heavy as fuck, and they're dangerous too, right? So you got to look out, like while you're doing it, you have to keep in mind that it might hit the person who's trapped in the car. So
it's also a car. Like there's electrical stuff, there's gasoline, there's a
lot of different components to think about. And thankfully, that's why there's chiefs and guys who have way more experience than I am, who know what the fuck they're doing. So
yeah. Do you think from joining this, like we never really talk about it too much, but like, I forget honestly that you do this. What have you learned? Like, what have you personally, like, are there any regrets? Like, do you sometimes wish you didn't do this? Do you sometimes wish that you did it sooner? Like, what's your overall take on what you did here?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think overall it's been a positive. I think it's been really cool. It was something I was just curious about and figured I'd try. The positives are the community is really cool. Like the guys and women who are in the fire department, it's just a good group of people. Like I've made friends with them. It also makes me feel like I am a part of the community in the town that I live in. So like, if I'm walking in the street or I'm driving somewhere, like I can honk at someone and wait.
It's like you're at work.
Yeah. And if I need help with something, like if, I need someone, if I need help moving or help with finding a contractor for a certain job, like I can just text one of them, and they all have different jobs. There's cops and firefighters and nurses and lawyers and stuff. So it's a good group there. In terms of the stuff I've learned, just basic stuff that maybe a lot of people might know, but just a lot of stuff about home construction, a lot of stuff about just building safety codes, how to operate heavy machinery.
How many times
those
throughout
sorts
your
of
life,
things.
normally, since you've done this, have you been like, oh, well, thank God I learned that at the fire department. Now I can apply that to this. Does that happen a lot?
No,
No.
not too often. I mean, there was one. I don't know if I talked about this on the podcast, but a wedding where I had to put out a fire.
Yeah, I don't think you brought that up.
With a fire extinguisher.
Yeah.
And it was funny. That actually happened to be that was like right when I had joined. So I had been studying on the flight to this wedding, this chapter on fire extinguishers. And when I got there at the wedding, basically those like sparkling things, set off a fire in like a palm tree, and it was like floor to ceiling flames.
Holy shit.
And I just ran to it because all my friends know I'm a firefighter now. And I'm like, well, it would look bad if I just ran away and hope someone else do it. And luckily, right when I pulled up, there was a fire extinguisher right there. I just grabbed it, pulled the pin, put it out. But that was the only like real life thing that was pretty cool.
Yeah.
The only negative is it's a definitely pretty big time commitment, which I knew going into it. What a lot of people don't realize about volunteer firefighters is like most of the country is volunteer.
Mm-hmm.
And the most frequently asked question I get from anyone is like, oh, so like, what are your like shifts? And it's not shifts.
Yeah, you're on call.
You have a pager, and if you are available, you go. If you're not, you don't. That's it, like 24/7. So it's up to me if I want to turn on my pager and I'm available, or if I just don't want to go that day, or like I'm busy or I'm traveling or something, I turn off the pager.
Any 2 a.m. calls yet?
Yeah, there's been plenty where I've woken up in the middle of the night. Sometimes I turn the pager off just because like Lauren doesn't want to be woken up in the middle of the night.
Yeah.
So I try to do. You basically have a quota that you have to do. So you have to do like 20% of the overall calls that you get.
Mm-hmm.
And I do them. I hit my quota, plenty during the week, during the day, after work at night. That I don't really have to worry about getting up in the middle of the night.
Would you recommend this for everybody, or would you say that you generally have to be? Look, it's not for everyone, right? I mean, like if you're morbidly obese or whatever, like you got to be an active.
There are guys who are morbidly obese who
that's true. Right?
They complete the training stuff. So hats off to them. I don't know how they do it because it was difficult for me as a relatively fit person. So no, I would not say it's for everyone. I'd say it's for people who. I'd say the majority of people who I would recommend it for would be like, teenagers or people in high school who just want to develop some confidence, learn some cool things, be part of a community.
I liken it a lot. Like it's not like it at all, really, but like when I was in the Boy Scouts, right? Like it's kind of laughed about in some circles, but like I immediately shut that down, bro. Like the feeling of camaraderie alone. Just being on the same page as everybody else in a group, in a troop, in a whatever, like the things that you learn in the Boy Scouts, like just like I think about it now, looking back, like I know how to make a fire, I know I know like the do's and don'ts of hiking, I know the do's and like how to like track an animal, I learned how to do that shit, I earned those badges, like, and the feeling that you would get just camping out in the woods with a bunch of guys. Is a feeling of like, well, we're out here, and if anything goes wrong, we're gonna figure it out. And everyone else is, comfy in their house right now, but we're just, for whatever reason, you never once felt like, oh, this sucks. Even though it would suck. Like it wasn't always camping at like, in June. Like we went camping in December, January, like in the frozen, like literally we would wake up and have fire watch at night because there was no heat. And to stay warm, there had to be a fire, but you can't leave it unattended, right? So I remember waking up at 2 a.m. as like a 10-year-old and just feeding logs into a fire for an hour so everyone else can sleep and be warm. And you're like, we're all depending on each other. I feel like the department's like that too. Like you get that feeling of like I'm part of something.
Yeah.
That's bigger than me.
Isn't it weird that the things that in the moment you thought sucked and were miserable.
They built my character.
You always look on them fondly.
Always.
Isn't that weird?
Yeah, that is weird.
I always hearken it back to like, and I think a huge part of it that you were mentioning was the community aspect.
Yeah.
Which it is because you, as cliche as it sounds, you're part of something bigger than yourself.
Right.
And you are taking care of other people and you are trusting them to take care of you in the same way. So it's a trust. It's a camaraderie there. There's assholes, there's good people,
Totally.
there's mentors, there's friends that you make lifelong connections with, and there's people that you never want to see again. But it's, that ability to know that your brother or your sister next to you can help you and can save you and is competent enough and they're trained. Same with the Boy Scouts. Like, if shit goes wrong, you're in it together. And it's that sense of like community is so important.
Yeah. And like, I wonder now, like, dude, like, I feel like Boy Scouts would, like, if I was the president, it would be mandatory. Something like that. Like, just to be a real human being in the world and like in the wilderness and like getting to that part of you. That's why to this day, like sometimes now as I get older, man, like now, I don't want to go to the bar and drink all afternoon with my friends, actually. I think I'm just going to go on a big hike alone. Like, and it literally makes me, you get this like connection to nature that some kids, like literally people actually just don't have at all.
Yeah.
Like they look at a hike and they're like, this is like, makes no sense to me. But the feeling of calmness and like, what's the word? Contentness, rather.
Yeah.
With like yourself and the world, that's found out there. It's important to have.
I think I 100% agree with you. And I was actually just talking to my wife's grandma, who is probably close to 90 at this point. And she was asking me about the volunteer fire department and being like, it's so great that you do that. She was like, when I was younger, or like when my kids were younger in like the 60s and 70s, there was a waiting list to be a volunteer firefighter, or they had the auxiliary police, which was like, I don't think it no longer exists. But yeah, people wanted to serve their community, or they wanted to be a part of these things. And now, like,
dude, now
it's like it's down like 50% now. We're struggling to get people to come to calls. Like sometimes, like I've been to a few where I'm the only person
that responded,
and I'm just sitting on the front of the truck just waiting for people. And yeah, I think it's so important and critical. And I almost agree with you about a mandatory aspect of it.
Yeah.
And
mandatory is a weird word, right?
I don't want anything to be compulsory, but like I think so many people can gain so much confidence and contentment, like you said, from some community thing that is where you're learning skills and you're struggling a lot.
I saw there was a woman, she came out with a book. I got to read it. She wrote a book about how therapy, this is just,
Abigail Schreier.
I think that was her. She
Bad
was on
Therapy?
Rogan.
Yeah,
She
Bad
was on
Therapy.
a couple of other people. Bad Therapy.
Yep.
So she was talking about how rumination is actually one of the biggest symptoms of depression. When you're ruminating over an issue, over something that happened to you or whatever, or something that's bothering you over and over and over again, then you go to therapy and you solidify that rumination in your mind with someone else, this like idea of like chatting it out and talking about it constantly and thinking about it. And realistically, that is not a good thing to do if something's bothering you, because it becomes way bigger. The neurons and all that stuff that you use to make that conversation happen get like stronger and stronger over time. And her argument is that, just go on, get a fucking life, man. Like in a way, like go do something hard, develop a skill in nature. Like, that's why exercising is good for depression. She goes, it's not even like the hormonal thing. It's literally just because when you're doing something hard, you can't think about anything else other than what you're doing.
Literally, yeah.
And that way you forget about whatever the fuck it was that was bothering you. Yeah. And I was like, I totally agree with that.
Yeah. And I think it's so important to seek discomfort. It's very important, I think.
I agree.
I mean, think about I always tell this to Lauren, and and she jokes with me because I kind of hammer it home, but you never regret exercise.
Never.
Have you ever exercised and been like,
recently started doing it again, and I regretted how long I waited to do this. I'm like,
and every time you wake up or like you feel kind of shitty, or like you just had a bender of a weekend and you're like, I should work out. And you force yourself, and like the first 15 minutes fucking sucks, and you're getting warmed up and you're all stiff.
Yep.
And then an hour goes by and you're like, fuck, I feel fantastic.
Yeah.
And if that feeling you could put into a pill, everyone would take it.
Yes.
Because it is the best feeling in the world. But I think it's not just exercise, it's just seeking actions that push you to learn more about yourself and to push you out of your comfort zone a little bit. And I think having a communal aspect to it as well just doubles all the benefits. And it's the same thing with I do the fire department, I do jujitsu, like all of these things that I am literally getting choked out at 7 a.m.
Literally,
by a stranger. And at the end, we're like high-fiving, like hugging, just like nerding out, talking about it. And I feel the drive back from jujitsu, I feel so fucking good.
Yeah, dude.
And I'm like, God, man, that was a great start to the day. And me and the guys that I do it with are so close because we're literally like battling each other and like gritting all of our muscles to try to like kill each other.
Yeah, man.
And 2 seconds later, we're like shaking each other's hands, like bowing to each other, being like, oh, great class, man. Like, that was good. You got me in that choke and like whatever. And like, yeah, you feel fantastic.
Do you think you could beat the shit out of me? I mean, you probably could have before you even did this, maybe. You know, I'm not like a fighter. I don't know what to do. But like, do you think now for sure you've got some shit under your belt that would like solidify a win?
I think 6 months of jiu-jitsu training will give you enough confidence that you might not be able to beat the shit out of anyone, but you can control a fight situation regardless of the size of someone, which that is the coolest thing.
You could detain someone before it escalates.
It's one thing to like, I think boxing is great, or like any martial art, you know, Taekwondo, Muay Thai, all of those will teach you skills to be able to handle yourself in a confrontation. Jiu-jitsu, what I love about it, and yeah, sure, I'd love to be a black belt someday, but that's going to take 10 years.
Yeah.
And also, it doesn't teach you how to beat the shit out of someone. It teaches you how to submit someone. So if someone confronts you at a bar or on the street, you don't have to knock them out and then, you know, risk going to prison for the rest of your life for manslaughter. Mm-hmm. You literally can just, you know, tie their arm up and tie their leg up or submit them or get them on the ground and just be like, you done?
Right.
And like, you don't actually have to beat the shit out of someone. You just, it teaches you how to control someone else's body. And the first time you feel jujitsu, like if I did it to you, we could do it after the podcast if you want, I could put some pressure on you and you would be like, holy shit.
No, I let my friend Errol once, man, do
you
something
feel
to me.
like
I was like, oh
doll.
my God.
And like I've done it to like, to some bigger guys just to show them, you know, on like a bachelor party. I'm just like, yeah, let me just show you some moves. And like guys who are like 6'5", like 230 pounds, they're like, wow, I didn't realize how like, how incapable I am when someone
big
grabs
tree
hold
fall hard, right?
Yeah. But it's funny to branch on the topic you brought up, which is the bad therapy. We both talked before the show, like neither of us are really reading any books right now that are very...
Yeah, we get busy, okay?
Yeah.
Who cares?
But I am reading, or I just read a good article about, have you heard of Jonathan Haidt?
Yeah, love him, man.
So he wrote The Coddling of the American Mind. It's a fantastic book that I'd recommend for anyone to read.
We've talked about it.
Yeah, but he just came out with a new one called, which is similar to Abigail Schreier. It's called The Anxious Generation. Yeah. And it's about... it's about basically the phenomenon of smartphones and social media and what it's doing to this generation of kids and how it's the rates of anxiety, depression, suicide are just at all-time highs from their use of social media and the isolation that it causes them. And you see all these videos of like, you know, a frat party from the 90s and like no one's on their phone and like everyone's having the best time of their life. And then you look at kids like at a brunch, like teenagers, and they're just all on their phones.
Yeah, it's crazy.
And yeah, we're guilty of it too. But the point that Jonathan Haidt brings up is he wants to change the norms of society through basically 3 or 4 rules that he wants, not necessarily mandated, but maybe become societal norms that everyone starts to adopt these rules, which is no phones in schools.
That's already begun, right? In England, I believe.
I think, yeah, some states in the U.S. have also experimented with it. So the first is no phones in schools. The second is no cell phone or smartphone until age 14 and no social media until age 16. So on the face of it, those sound very reasonable. If I was a teenager, I'd be like, fuck that. That sounds like shit. And the first time I heard him talk about this on Rogan and other podcasts, I was like, yeah, that sounds totally reasonable. Definitely no phones in schools. I can agree with that. No smartphone until age 14. That's going to be a tougher one. No social media until 16. That's very tough. But first, I want to hear your thoughts on that. And then, but secondly, what I wanted to talk about was Greg Lukianoff, who was the co-author of Coddling of the American Mind with Jonathan Haidt, actually posted kind of a rebuttal
Really?
Yeah, which we can talk about, but I want to hear your thoughts on just the Jonathan Haidt's rules, essentially.
I totally agree. And he also talks about how in 2014 was like the big year that all these, if you look at the data and all the statistics on depression for teenagers, that was the year that things really started to rev up, because I believe that's when the like button was.
Yeah, he credits, for lack of a better term, a lot of the downfall of social media to the like button.
Right. And I can also speak from personal experience in that my wife used to work in a hospital, and the children's in the pediatric ward, floor, whatever it is, wing, I don't know. But she said, she goes, I can't even tell you the number of young teenage girls who were suicidal on their second, third attempt at suicide, cuts, pills, whatever it is. So it's obviously the right thing to do.
Yeah.
But the thing is how do you implement this?
So that was the issue that Greg Lukianoff, who posted this rebuttal, had, which was like, well, because Jonathan Haidt proposed like the government having legislation, not to institute these rules per se, but to kind of backdoor some regulations about parental consent. So like raising the limit. I think right now parental consent for social media is 13 years old, where like if you want a Facebook or Instagram account, your parent has to register. Obviously, I'm sure a kid could just like lie about their birth date and create an account. But then the second piece of that would be some third-party age verification system implemented into all of these social media apps and having the government regulate that. So basically, if you want to, this would be for adults too, but if you wanted to create a social media account, you would need some kind of like a credit, like scores type thing where you submit your social security number or submit a photo of your license and have them verify your age and your personality.
That's common now. I believe also that there are porn sites now that are requiring you to upload a photo ID to tell if you're over the age of 18 or not.
Yeah, I think certain states.
Which I think is even more important and more imperative to the cultural health of at least of the male population.
Yeah, I'd say for men, 1,000%, porn on like smartphones is probably the number one issue. Dude, I would imagine for high school students, like having access to anything you want is so unhealthy.
It's insane, bro. It's insane.
So unhealthy.
That you can watch a girl get a baseball bat shoved up her ass and you're 13 years old.
There goes our monetization on YouTube.
Yeah, well, whatever. I mean, like, hey, you know what? We're talking about real shit here. This is what people are looking at all day. And that used to be funny when we were kids. That was like, 2 girls, 1 cup.
Right.
1 man, 1 jar, whatever it was. That was horrible. I don't know if you saw that one.
Nope. Yeah. Don't want to.
You really don't. But anyway, that used to be funny, but now like people are walking around with leashes on, dude. Like literally, and they're not kidding. Like, can you imagine if you were in high school and there was a kid with a leash barking walking through the halls? Dude, you're going to tell me you wouldn't go up to hey, pal, what are you doing?
I'm going to stop you right there because this conversation's veering a place I don't want.
Well, I'm just saying, but it's all because of this shit. The phones, man. It needs to. People are. It's giving young impressionable minds way too much stuff to cling to as like an identity or what they feel like. It needs to be buffered. But also, are you, me, and Jonathan Haidt? Are we just kind of being old farts? I mean, I don't know.
So that's what I found interesting about Greg Lukianoff's, because
what's his main like point? This is impossible to implement. It's not right because we're fucking with the progression of technology. What?
His main point is that it actually limits children's free speech rights, which you may not really think that minors have free speech rights, but he proposes that putting any limitations on children for quote unquote protection to protect children is in fact limiting their access to information, their access to speak freely, to engage with content that could be important for their lives in some way.
But I think it's different in a school, right? A school should have the right to not allow phones.
Yeah, I think so. 100%.
That to me would do enough well.
I think that's a very fair proposal.
Fair thing to propose.
But what I found interesting, and I kind of agree with him on this, which I didn't at first, so he changed my mind a little bit. Or maybe I just wasn't thinking of it deeply enough. But he said having like social media is essentially like it's a privilege, right? To be able to access Twitter, to like, if some global phenomenon is happening or something in your neighborhood is happening, to be able to go onto Twitter and to read, what's going on, to read the news, if there's riots in your streets, to be able to go and post about it or go live or videotape it and film it and like broadcast that out to the world. And sometimes certain aspects of social media require like being anonymous, whether you're a religious dissenter or speaking out against something bad that's happening. Like you want to be anonymous in that sense. So, and I'm sure like the case for that is very fringe. But his argument is that any limitation on free speech, as reasonable as it sounds and as like small as it sounds, will always get pushed further and further.
Yeah.
So even though this sounds, extremely reasonable, like limiting smartphones and social media to kids, yeah, of course.
I get where
we don't want harmful content, but he's like, yes, but
I get it.
It's kind of like the COVID restrictions where it's like, once you allow, the bar to be moved a little bit, then it can keep getting moved and moved and moved. Yeah. So it's a slippery slope. And he says it should not be on the government to protect children. It should be on the parents. So if anything, make these norms, these rules about smartphone and social media use, the socially acceptable norms of the parents, not the government.
Yeah.
And that's obviously way harder to implement because it's parent by parent, and the parent wants to give their kid a smartphone when they're 6. It's their right to do so.
Right.
But it's, I guess, more about how do you educate parents through the schools or through the government even about the harms and how to protect your kids from, the things that they access.
Yeah. I mean, he's been making the rounds. He's been on television, not just podcasts, But to his point, who's this guy, Greg Lukianoff. Okay, so his point is also like in the idea of keeping government out of these kinds of situations is extremely important. And he's absolutely right, because in Canada right now there's Bill C-63, I believe, or 163. I'm not Canadian. I don't really care or know off the top of my head, but I know what it's about. And it's about like their approach to this issue is limiting the speech that you're allowed to use on social media or online, like hate speech, being rude, but this is the thing about that.
Scotland just did something similar. Too.
Right. So the issue with that, though, is talk about limiting free speech. Like that's literally limiting what people can and can't say in a public forum. And that's wrong for a lot of reasons, because again, once you give that power to the government, it's like, okay, fine, we're not allowed to be mean online. But what's the penalty if I am mean online? What's going to happen?
And who gets to decide?
And who gets to tell me that I did something wrong? And why are they in authority on this?
Yeah. And also, what's the Overton window on that?
Right.
The Overton window, if you're not familiar.
I'm sorry.
I know you're familiar, but for the listeners, the Overton window is basically the goalposts of acceptable language, essentially, which changes over time.
And we already have limitations on this.
Yeah.
Like, you can't call someone a racial slur. Like public, I mean, you can, but that's a hate crime. Like that is illegal. Like you can't.
Or it's like socially unacceptable, and you'll get knocked the fuck out.
Oh my God, you'll get your ass beat, of course. And thank God. But, doing that online and giving like some new bureaucracy the authority to put people in prison because of something they said, that's a really slippery slope. And that's happening. Like you said, in Scotland, you said?
Yeah, Scotland, and again, I'm not too familiar on what it is, but they were gonna put. Scotland has one of the biggest comedy festivals in the world, every year.
I heard a couple of comedians got in trouble,
and they're like gonna have cops at this comedy festival to like look out for hate speech within comedy, and it's like that. Right. That's the most like Orwellian shit I've ever heard.
We're all going to jail then.
Yeah, exactly. It's like and who gets to decide like. Who made you the arbiter of what is acceptable and what isn't acceptable?
Right. And the joke I made on Instagram, it's like they're proposing this idea that people will be, they're trying to save the kids. They're trying to save kids from harm online because it's making them depressed and making them suicidal. But Canada also has a publicly funded program for if you do want to kill yourself, they'll help you. So that you can do it safely, efficiently, and at a low cost. So it's like, where are your values? And they tried it. It got shut down, to be fair. But they recently tried to extend this privilege of assisted suicide to the mentally ill. It's like people who are mentally ill don't know. Like they have a mental illness. You're going to let them kill themselves because they feel like it's the right thing to do? It's insane, right? So
yeah, you should be wary of any statement from a government or from an authority figure that ends with "for your protection."
For your protection and it is maybe initially, but ultimately,
well, it's the same thing. Like when you just said to protect the kids, that is a phrase that anyone can get behind.
Right.
Oh, well, it's to protect the kids. It's the same with COVID, right? It's like to protect, the vulnerable.
The vulnerable.
To protect, and again, like these rules, like initially you're like, well, that sounds totally reasonable, and of course we should accept those.
Mm-hmm.
But knowing history, knowing that once you hand over the right of something to the government or to an authority figure, it's only going to get worse. Basically. I heard, and you have to read enough history or know enough to realize that while these sound like great ideas now to protect whatever population you're looking to protect and to limit anxiety and depression or suicide rates, that's super important. It is. But is giving that power to the government or giving that power to authority figures who are just as infallible as me or you the answer? Probably not.
Just a really good rule of thumb, like in the future in your life, if you're ever getting into politics or you're getting involved in like decisions being made locally or at a federal level, anytime anything has like a title like Save the Puppies or For All Puppies or like anything where if the title of the thing is something that if you were to not agree with it, you would be seen as like a bad person, you can be sure that there's some fuckery going on.
Yeah.
Right?
100%.
There's something else going on behind the scenes, like the Patriot Act. It's like during that time, it's like, what, you're not a patriot? Like if you were against the Patriot Act,
and it's in,
and realistically, we gave away all of our privacy,
and it's like, it's in those times of turmoil where we feel unsafe and we feel vulnerable that we're just like do whatever you got to do, like like sign off, like we agree, and that's where they sneak in that fuckery.
Any title like that, it's like, okay, well, what do you really want here?
And that's my favorite, one of my favorite lines or quotes from Thomas Sowell is, "There are no solutions, there are only trade-offs."
Yep. We want to do a new thing in the show where we do a top 3 list.
And shout out to my Uncle Dan, who recommended this. Dan is a big listener of the show.
Yeah, big fan. And he was like, I feel like it would be really interesting. So, you know what, we're going to go for.
Also, my Uncle Dan, famous for the Milky Minutes commercial from AT&T back in like 2010.
He was also in a Wendy's commercial.
He was a star on commercials back in the day. He was always the the goofy dad in every commercial. Yeah. So shout out to Dan.
That movie he made that we all went to the
Video Guys.
Dude, the Video Guys was a great movie, very funny.
And I almost want to rewatch it.
I do too. It was I remember actually laughing like really very hard. It was a good movie. Yeah. So top 3 list. I want to do top 3 meals, like death row meals.
Okay.
What are your top? If you could choose 3 of them? What would it be?
Peanut butter and jelly is my number 1.
Peanut butter and jelly?
Peanut butter and jelly is my number 1.
That's the last thing you're going to put in your mouth as a peanut butter and jelly?
Absolutely.
What?
So I've told this to so many people. Peanut butter and jelly.
The last thing you're going to eat.
Dude, peanut butter and jelly is my favorite meal.
Kyle.
And I don't give a shit what anyone thinks.
Really? You're serious?
I swear to God. A peanut butter and jelly on white bread, just, Smucker's jelly and, Jiffy
I
peanut
can't believe
butter.
What you're saying.
Dude, it's my favorite meal. When I was a kid, that was my comfort food. I had it like
Filet
every
mignon.
single day.
Nut, don't
just
care.
simple. And also, I have the lowest standards for food. Like I'm
white,
I'm one of those people who just like eats to live. I don't like live to eat. So like, yes, of course I appreciate a steak, like a ribeye, mashed potatoes, and cream spinach. But honestly, peanut butter and jelly.
If I was the death row guy, I'd be like, is this guy fucking kidding me,
dude?
Peanut butter and jelly?
Swear to God, because.
You may as well get an Uncrustable.
It's also the state. It's also the state of mind that it puts me in. It reminds me of like my mom, or my dad making that for me after school, or like
nostalgia.
Yeah, just me being a kid sitting at the kitchen table with my legs swinging off, just pure bliss eating a PB&J and nothing. Just I didn't.
Do you
have
need
to
a glass of milk with it?
I'd love a glass of milk.
Me too.
With it.
No, absolutely. I'm a big milk with the PB&J.
Dude, I was just on a bachelor party and we went to the grocery store beforehand to get supplies and everything, and I was like, hold on, before we go, we got to get a box of Uncrustables.
No, dude, the best.
I had 6.
The best.
I had 6
best
Uncrustables
part
in 3
of having
days.
a kid. They're always in the freezer, man.
Oh yeah,
So
and we were
good.
going skiing. So you know what I did? Took it out of the freezer in the morning, put it in my chest pocket
sir.
in my ski jacket.
Of course.
So an hour on the slopes, that thing's nice and thawed out. Oh,
Yeah,
that's all I need. Honestly,
You know, okay, I get like you need the dichotomy again. You need the peanut butter is a very roundish, low frequency kind of thing. Like it's peanut butter.
Yeah.
And then the jelly it's an S. It's
a
the
little
high frequency food. It's like a stingy food.
It's like a bass.
That comes together.
It's like a bass guitar. Yeah.
You put that all in the medium of the bread, and it is a nice thing to have in your mouth.
Look, is it the best death row meal, and is it a weird fucking answer?
It's just.
Of course it is, but it's my answer.
Okay.
So,
all right.
what's yours?
Death row meal. Man, I'm gonna. You know, I'm just gonna say. I mean, and this is another thing that would piss people off because it's so cliche. But filet mignon but with the Brussels sprouts, with
Crispy?
the mashed potatoes,
Crispy Brussels sprouts.
crispy Brussels sprouts,
Yeah.
and I want to get a couple of lobster wontons on the side. They have them at Prime. Dude, you gotta get the lobster wontons.
Yeah.
I'm not even kidding. That with a glass of red wine, and a little asparagus.
Yeah.
I kind of like the way asparagus makes your pee smell, to be honest.
I hate it.
I like how quick it is.
I hate it.
You take a bite, go take a piss, it smells like asparagus.
Are you like me that it makes me think of Austin Powers every time?
Yeah, every time. But it is that quick.
Yeah,
like in the movie,
it's
you're
crazy.
like, oh, it would never happen.
You
that
forget.
quickly. It would.
You forget, like you literally go to take your first piss after you eat, and you're like, "What the fuck?" And you're like, I had asparagus.
And you know what else is kind of nice? Like I would say, I'd be on death row. I'd be like, I do want that, but can I also just have one more bowl of Lucky Charms?
Oh,
just with
yeah.
cold
That's
milk,
me. Dude.
like cold
Yes,
milk.
that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
That's me with PB&J, basically.
Right.
You know?
Dude, a bowl of Lucky Charms is like really.
Yeah.
It's such a mouthful. And the marshmallows, I love that they're like they crack apart in your mouth. With
Also, can you
It's a
imagine?
dessert.
Could you
Dessert.
imagine pitching Lucky Charms today?
Yeah.
Just like yeah. So it's basically Cheerios, right? And then we're just gonna throw a shit ton of marshmallows in there. And you're like, what?
Yeah.
fuck are you talking?
And is it General Mills? They make all that
Yeah.
cereal, dude. They say like there's like that shit is like literally not food almost. Like it's just barely food.
It's basically like
Barely.
Fun Dip in milk.
Yeah, it's dessert. Yeah, and we did well.
Dude, we lived off that. Like
I know. Every day. Lucky
I
Charms.
talk about this all the time because now you see kids in high school, and I like follow my high school social media account. Like these kids are just like prime elite athletes, like eating so healthy, like avocados and blueberries and fucking.
I didn't have an avocado till I was 28 years old.
Dude, I didn't have vegetables till I was 17. And dude, I tell people like my every day from like age 5 to age 17, every day my meals in the morning at like 7 a.m. it was a bowl of Lucky Charms or Cinnamon Toast Crunch. Then nothing till like 12. And then it was probably like pizza, like chocolate chip cookie.
Dieting
and
wasn't
like
a thing then.
Lay's
Nutrition
potato
wasn't
chips,
a thing in the 90s. No one cared.
Powerade. And then like before football practice, I'd have like an ice cream cone.
Yeah.
And then I'd go home and probably have more pizza. And I'm like,
Yeah.
I did that for fucking 12 years of my life.
Right.
Just straight.
Right.
It's crazy.
We got to get to the third one though. We did say list of 3.
Yes.
So would you actually put Lucky Charms?
No, I would put as my dessert would be just a bowl of the residue milk from Cinnamon Toast Crunch.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah.
Just a cold glass of that.
Yeah. But okay, to give you a normal answer, my second one would probably be, like a Wolfgang's Porterhouse,
Right.
mashed potatoes, cream
Right.
spinach, red wine. That would be my standard pick. My third pick would probably be, and I haven't thought this through, but just now I was inspired by it, would just be a medley of my favorite fast food stuff.
Sure.
So I love like a Five Guys burger, Five Guys burger or like a Crunchwrap Supreme from Taco Bell and like a Wendy's Frosty, dude. Dude, a Wendy's Frosty.
You dip the fries in there?
Oh, hell yeah. Of course you do.
You got to dip the fries.
But I'd probably get
Frosty, dude.
because I'm asking the prison guard. I'm like, dude, you know what? Give me McDonald's fries.
Right.
I'm dipping that in the Wendy's Frosty.
I'm gonna die, man.
I'm getting everything.
Yeah.
A Chick-fil-A sandwich. I just get a whole mound of shit.
Right. Like a platter.
The other thing is my vision for death row, and I've thought about this a lot, would be a pyramid of Toll House chocolate chip cookies, not baked fully.
Okay.
You know,
you can't bake
just
anything
like
fully.
I want to pick up a cookie and it just falls apart.
You got to use two hands.
Yeah, two hands.
It's gonna fall apart.
And like if you put them on a napkin, you just see all the grease come through.
Yeah.
I want just a pyramid of chocolate chip cookies.
Yeah, that's another reason. Like that's why the hot chocolate chip cookie with the ice cold ice cream. You need the extremes
baby.
meeting. You need that. That's what makes the mouth.
God damn.
God, I'm hungry now.
Yeah,
I want to eat.
Yeah. What about you?
My last one, like because
you said how many?
It would
you
be
said?
steak, a bowl of Lucky Charms, and I'm going to call them separate meals because I would have the whole box of Lucky Charms.
Yeah.
But I also would do the fast food thing. I think I would go to Wendy's. Dude, $1 menu is all you need at Wendy's. You need the crispy chicken sandwich.
Yep.
The junior bacon cheeseburger. Of
course.
You got to get a 4-piece McNuggets, barbecue sauce, and honey mustard because you got to switch it up. Frosty, fries, and just a big fat Coke. No, I would go with a Sprite.
You know what?
I'm a Sprite guy. You're a Sprite guy too, no?
You know what I love? For some reason, I only get it at Wendy's. My soda, Dr. Pepper.
You know, what is with you fucking people?
No.
It's root beer.
People have agreed.
I hate
people
Dr. Pepper.
People have agreed with me on this. A Dr. Pepper with Wendy's nuggets.
Oh, there's
that
something
spice,
there. There's something there.
It complements each other perfectly.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is.
And people sleep on Burger King. Like
I never liked Burger
I'm a big
King.
Whopper guy. I like the mayo and the onion. I like
You know why? Because I think I grew up like basically across the street from a Burger King.
Yeah, you
and that
did.
smell
You did.
wafted too much, and I got too familiar with it.
Yeah.
That was why.
Yeah, that's what I would do. Those would be my three meals.
I'm forgetting my favorite meal of all is a Mama Teresa's buffalo chicken.
Yeah. So listen.
Yeah.
For years, because we both love that restaurant, there's the rigatoni Fiorentina on that menu. It's number 23 at Mama Teresa's. It's pasta.
You've ordered that a lot.
It's rigatoni with dude, every time I go, with chicken and spinach and this like pink sauce. And I really think it is like one of the best things you could ever eat. Rigatoni Fiorentina at Mama Teresa's. The one in New Hyde Park in the little shopping mall there. There's another Mama Teresa's. That one's bullshit. This one, you got to go to this one there.
There's a few of them. Shout out to Mama Teresa's in New Hyde Park. There's debate on Long Island of like the best pizza spots. I won't get into that debate, but I will say the buffalo chicken slice at Mama Teresa's.
No, it is. I remember one time your mom was like, you were at college, and you were like, your mom was like, you're coming home from college, I'm going to make you your favorite meal. And you were like, no, don't don't make me anything. Go to Mama Teresa's and get me a pie of buffalo pie.
Oh, yeah.
She was like, no, Kyle, I'm going to make you a home-cooked meal. You're like, no, fuck that.
Nah. Nothing's as good as Mama T's.
No
man.
way.
Yeah, I did the same thing when I was studying abroad in Europe for 6 months. I came home. My parents picked me up from JFK, and I was like, if there's not a box of Mama Teresa's buffalo chicken slice with extra blue cheese and a grandma, don't even pick me up.
Yeah. Let's do one last thing before we wrap up the episode. Let's do some recommendations.
Okay.
We can do a book, a movie, and a podcast. How about that?
Okay.
All right. The movie I want to recommend to everybody is going to be... Oh, you know what I want to recommend to everybody? Because everyone gave it shit, and it's not a bad movie at all. The Buzz Lightyear movie.
I didn't even know there was one.
Yeah, they made a movie about the origins of Buzz Lightyear. Dude, it's a good fucking movie.
Who voices it?
It's not even a kid's movie. I think it's like Chris Pratt. You know,
it's not Tim Allen?
No. I know, but this is what I'm saying. Everybody was like, no, and it's gonna be woke because there's like a black lesbian in it. But but listen, every black woman in the military is a lesbian. Like that's realistic. That's not woke, right? So, but it's called Lightyear, and dude, I'm telling you, it's a fucking good movie, dude.
Yeah.
Because I'll tell you what they did. They went. It opens up, and it's like Andy was. Back in the whatever, when Andy was a kid, you know, Andy from Toy Story, he's like the kid. They were like, he was obsessed with Buzz Lightyear, that new action figure, whatever. That action figure came from this movie. Like, this movie is what Andy saw when he was a kid.
Oh.
They made the movie that
That's kinda
he
cool.
got obsessed
Cool
with
premise.
and got the Buzz Lightyear action figure. Bro, it's a good fucking movie. People shit on it. It's not woke. It's not Pixar kids. It's good.
The only thing that bothers me though is that nowadays everything is either like a remake, a spin-off, or like a sequel. It bothers
It's
me.
true. It's true.
Someone just posted, I think Elon posted on Twitter, it was 1984, a Dune movie and a Ghostbusters movie came out. 2001, a Dune movie and a Ghostbusters movie came out. This year, a Dune movie and a Ghostbusters movie came out. It's like,
book I'd recommend. We've probably talked about these all already. I'm going to think of a book I haven't talked about that I just like for whatever reason. You know, it's a good book. Love Letters by Great Men. It's a really good book. It's a book that you could just read and it makes you look out the window.
was that the one that you said you were reading to your daughter?
Yes, I was. And then oh man, I should get back into that then. It's basically a book, a collection of all of the great minds of the world. And I believe they're all men, but I think there's some women in there. But, you know, it's like a love letter written by Abraham Lincoln, or a love letter written by William Shakespeare, or a love letter written by, you know, Winston Churchill or whatever. It's a really cool book. Podcast I'd recommend, History of Long Island. Dude, there's a podcast. I don't know who these people are. If you're watching it, I don't know if they know we exist or whatever, but they got to be from Long Island. They do a Long Island history podcast. There's so much shit about this island that you've never even known, dude. It's so crazy. And they come up with a new episode like every week. So you always, if you care about where you're from or whatever town you grew up in, you can search like, you know, Levittown, History of Long Island, and there's probably a whole episode about that. So History of Long Island, Love Letters by Great Men, and Lightyear.
I haven't really watched any good movies lately, but on the flight home recently, I started watching The Last of Us, which is a show on HBO Max.
Great video game, dude.
Dude, very, very cool premise.
Yeah,
Do you know about it?
Oh yeah, I know everything.
Okay.
Well,
yeah.
I know the game, and I played the game in full.
Yeah, but it's with Pedro Pascal, who's like the big actor now. But the premise of it is about it's from a video game. I think it's only 6 episodes. I've only watched like 2, but it's awesome so far. The premise of it is basically instead of a bacterial pandemic like COVID or whatever, this is actually a fungal pandemic. So fungus, which is a living, like breathing organism that can basically like create, you know, and like psychedelics, it can infect a host and make them go crazy. Right. And this is where a fungus basically infects human beings. And turns them into these crazy...
Dude,
like,
the clickers.
Yeah.
You know those things?
Oh,
you
yeah.
see them yet? Oh,
yeah.
God, they're awesome.
So that's a really good show that I just started and will probably continue with. Book Open by Andre Agassi, which Andre Agassi was a tennis great in like the 90s. And you do not have to know who he is. You don't have to be a tennis fan whatsoever. But this is his memoir about growing up. His dad was basically one of those like psycho tennis dad that forced him to hit like 1,000 tennis balls every night and like screamed at him. Right. And
sleep in the garage.
Yeah. And Andre Agassi was this very sensitive soul, and like, you know, became one of the greatest tennis players who like he fulfilled his dream, but like he almost did it out of spite from his father. And he dated Brooke Shields, and he had all these drug issues, and he was balding, but he had this like image of being like the bad boy with long feathered mullet hair, and he wore a wig, and
he wore a wig,
dude. And there's a ghostwriter, and I don't remember who it was, but the ghostwriter was fantastic. The writing of it is like some of the best writing I've ever seen. And it's a short book, and it's a book I recommend to everyone. And like sometimes when like a random stranger or like someone I meet is like, "Oh, you're into books? Like, what's one that you recommend?" I always say Open by Andre Agassi. It's like one of the coolest books I've ever read.
All right.
Podcast, Lex Friedman.
I mean, well, he's one of the best podcasters, man.
Yeah.
He has the best guests, I'll tell you that.
Yeah, I was surprised. My Uncle Dick, who hopefully is listening, he is a huge podcast guy. And I asked him, I was like, "Oh, you listen to Lex Friedman?" He was like, "Who?" I was like, "You've never heard of him?" I'm like,
"Yeah, he's one of the big ones."
But yeah, he's probably one of the best. He's very like monotone and like he talks slow and everything, but he's such a good interviewer.
I will say to your point about Lex, his questions are very satisfying because they're not the cliche questions. You go, "Oh, that's a good question."
He'll open up. Because he has like some of the most powerful people on. Like he had like Netanyahu. He had like Kanye. He was the first. I think he was the first.
Elon Musk.
He was the first guy to have Kanye on the podcast.
He gave him. Yeah, by the way, this whole thing of giving people a platform,
That's
it's
bullshit.
It's like, yeah, I let an adult talk.
Yeah, it's bullshit. I hate that phrase.
Fuck you talking about?
But no, yeah, like he'll throw some curveball questions at you that they sound stupid, but they'll actually elicit such a great response from the guests. Like he'll open the podcast with, "How do you define love?"
Right.
And then the guy just
And
like,
even the guy's like,
"Oh, yeah,
okay, didn't know we were going there."
right." And he'll ask like Mark Zuckerberg that question. Who,
like
he might not give the best
exactly.
answer, but like it's a better question than like, how does Facebook's business model
what
impact
inspired
women?
you to start Facebook? It's not that.
It's like the deep questions that are really cool.
Like, what's your earliest childhood memory? To like, I don't know, Chuck Palahniuk or something. You're like, I actually do want to know that.
Yeah, so he's a really good podcast, and if you're into like global events and stuff, or AI, or what's going on in Russia, or what's going on in Israel, and the impact of technology or engineering or anything you want to know, like he covers such a wide range of things.
And
they're
I
really good.
believe he does have some kind of expertise in AI. So
I think he was like an MIT professor of AI, and he's like a robotics.
So he's worth
engineer.
listening to. He's he knows his shit.
Yeah, so I like that. Maybe every episode we'll start ending with some of these top 3 and recommendations. So shout out to Dan for
We appreciate
being a good
Dan.
listener. And
we
for
appreciate everyone
recommending.
listening. And let's wrap it up.
All right, thanks everyone.
Thank
Take
you
care.
very much. See you next time.
Bye.